Even the brightest legends cast the darkest shadow. The Three Kingdoms era is filled with tales of heroism and ambition. But behind every triumph there were tragedies, betrayals, and lives lost to the cruelty of power. Today, we're stepping into those shadows. The following video explores the darker historical realities behind some of the characters featured in the Dynasty Warriors series. Topics discussed include violence, executions, war crimes, political manipulation, and implied assault as depicted or suggested in historical records. While the games offer a stylized and heroic portrayal of the Three Kingdoms era, the real history was far more brutal. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a different kind of video today where I want to explore the darker parts of the Three Kingdoms period, the brutal mishaps and some of the tragedies I want to discuss in this particular video. I will have a different one going over the atrocities I want to mention, some of the more infamous ones of like Cao Cao's, Ma Chao, Zhong Fei. Those will be in a different video. They may potentially be brought up in this video, but this will be mainly about victims or people who were unfairly brought to the sword or to their grave. And I want to focus on the stories behind them. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the first person. Cai Wenji. Cai Wenji, also known as Cai Yan, was a Chinese composer, poet, and writer who lived during the late Eastern Han Dynasty of China. She was a daughter of Cai Yong. Her courtesy name was originally Xiahouji, but was changed to Wenji during the Qin Dynasty to avoid naming taboo because the Chinese character for Zhao in her courtesy name is the same as that in the name of Sima Zhao, the father of the Qin Dynasty's founding emperor, Sima Yan. The particular brutality surrounding the character of Cai Wenji, who is a playable character in Dynasty Warriors, is because she has quite the tragic backstory. First off, her husband, Wei Zhongdao, died shortly after their marriage. Then after some time, her father, Cai Yong, is forced to work for Dong Zhuo and ends up getting killed as well because Lu Bu and Wang Yun killed him as part of the plot to get rid of Dong Zhuo. Then a few years later, when China entered a period of chaos, the Xiongnu nomads intruded into Han territory and captured Cai Wenji. Once abducted, she was forced to marry the Xiongnu wise prince of the West and bore him 2 children. 12 years later, the chancellor of the Han, Cao Zhi, asked for Cai's release in return for a huge ransom in the name of her father. After her release, Cai Wenji returned to her homeland, but left her children behind in Xiongnu territory and was to never see them again. The reason Cao Zhi wanted her back was that she was the sole surviving member of her clan, and he needed her to placate the spirits of her ancestors. It seems that Cao Zhi did it for his own selfish reasons. Within Cao Zhi's forces, Cai Wenji would go on to marry again a local government official by the name of Dong Si. Dong Si committed a capital crime later, and Cao Zhi was going to execute him. Cai Wenji pleaded with Cao Zhi for her husband's acquittal, and after seeing guests stirred by Cai Wenji's distressed appearance and behavior at a banquet that Cao Zhi was hosting, he ended up pardoning her husband Dong Si. Cai Wenji at all times seemed to be somebody who was a victim of her circumstances and the chaos that ensued. Xiahouji. Xiahouji, or Lady Xiahou, was a Chinese noblewoman of the Xiahou clan of the Shaowei state during the Three Kingdoms period. She was a niece of Xiahou Yuan, a famous general of the warlord Cao Cao, and she would end up marrying Zhong Fei. However, her marriage wasn't as fruitful as one may imagine. In 200 AD, Xiahouji was 13 or 14 years old and was captured by Zhong Fei when she went out to collect firewood in the local area of Jiao County. Zhong Fei discovered that she was a woman from a good family and married her. Now, there are several states of people saying that her origins and the exact circumstances of her abduction and marriage, including her feelings on the matter, are not clearly known. However, during that state of time, Zhong Fei was not known to be the nicest person. So through implicit understanding and bias, it's not the best look for a great hero of this time to take someone so young and capture them. Lady Xiahou was introduced into the Dynasty Warriors games in Dynasty Warriors 9. Her iteration would bring light to how gray of a character Zhong Fei really was. Again, because there is no way to know how Xiahouji felt in the matter of this, we can't say for sure that it was a unbearable situation, but we can say that I'm sure at some point during this ordeal that it probably wasn't the most favorable of outcomes for Xiahouji. Sun He and Sun Ba. Sun He and Sun Ba, the sons of Sun Quan, 3rd and 4th, respectively, were both imperial princes of the state of Eastern Wu during the Three Kingdoms period of China, both who would have tragic endings. Sun He, who started out in Sun Quan's favor and was rightfully named the crown prince, the heir of Sun Quan, would slowly fall out of favor due to a succession struggle with his brother Sun Ba. But in fact, it seemed that Sun Quan himself was the one who sowed the seeds of conflict between the 3rd and 4th sons. Although Sun Quan had already made Sun He the crown prince in 242, too, he also treated Sun Ba exceptionally well. This would lead to a power struggle that intensified over time, as Sun He and Sun Ba started vying for their father's favor and attention, and from this arose two opposing factions, one side supporting Sun He, the rightful heir, and the other who supported Sun Ba. As the power struggle intensified, Sun Quan grew tired of it, and was worried that the power struggle would end up in a civil war like the one between Yuan Shao's sons. So instead, he deposed of his son Sun He and exiled him. During his exile, Sun Quan would go on to regret his decision to depose Sun He, and would later make him the prince of a commandery. After Sun Quan had died, where his youngest son, Sun Liang, succeeded him, rumors began to spread that the regent at the time, Zhuge Ke, wanted to depose Sun Liang and put Sun He on the throne. Zhuge Ke was assassinated, and the new regent, Sun Jun, demoted Sun He back down to his commoner status. An emissary was then sent to Sun He, forcing him to commit suicide. His brother, Sun Ba, did not make it that long, as his father, Sun Quan, forced Sun Ba to commit suicide, for reasons unknown, but speculated because he grew tired of the constant struggle. Lu Xun. So we discussed Sun He and Sun Ba. Now we can discuss the death of Lu Xun, one of the more popular characters from the Dynasty Warriors series, and why his death was tragic in itself. Lu Xun, shown in the game and noted in history to be very close to Sun Quan, unfortunately would end up crawling to his grave because of that very friend. During the struggle succession, Lu Xun sided with the rightful heir, Sun He. Lu Xun would write a memorial to Sun Quan, trying to get him to understand, to create peace and harmony within his kingdom. Lu Xun would go as far to even request to leave where he was stationed, to go to the capital to speak with Sun Quan, and Sun Quan denied him. Sun Quan would begin to repeatedly send emissaries to reprimand Lu Xun for interfering with the succession, stating it was a family matter. Lu Xun would go on to die in anger and frustration at the age of 63, and it wasn't until about 5 years later that Sun Quan regretted what he did to Lu Xun. Zhenji. First married to Yuan Shi, the second son of Yuan Shao. After Yuan Shao lost to his rival Cao Zhi at the Battle of Guandu in 200, Cao Zhi would go on to defeat his sons in the Battle of Ye, and his forces occupied the city. The population was then massacred. Cao Zhi's forces seized control of the women of Yuan household, who were often raped. Upon meeting Zhenji, Cao Pi, Cao Zhi's son, was very impressed and entranced by her beauty, and his father allowed him to marry her. After Cao Zhi died, his kingdom was inherited by Cao Pi. Later that year, Cao Pi forced Emperor Xian to abdicate in his favor, effectively ending the Han Dynasty. Cao Pi became the emperor and established the state of Cao Wei. The former emperor presented his two daughters to Cao Pi to be his concubines. Cao Pi began to favor his other concubines, especially Guo Nuong. When Lady Zhen realized that Cao Pi favored her less, she started complaining. Cao Pi was furious when he heard about it, and a little while longer he sent an emissary to Ye to execute Lady Zhen by forcing her to take her own life. Liu Feng. Liu Feng was an adopted son of Liu Bei. He served as a general in his adopted father's military forces. In 219, Liu Feng and Meng De were stationed in Shangyong after the administrator had surrendered to them. Later that year, when Liu Bei's general Guan Yu led an attack from Jing province to attack an enemy garrison at Fan Castle, he repeatedly asked Meng De and Liu Feng to lead reinforcements from Shangyong to support him, but they refused, claiming that the situation in Shangyong was not stable yet. Eventually, Guan Yu was captured and executed by Sun Quan's forces. Liu Bei would go on to resent Liu Feng and Meng De for not aiding Guan Yu. Meng De would become afraid when he heard of Liu Bei's anger towards him, so he defected to the state of Cao Wei. After defecting to Wei, Meng De wrote a letter to Liu Feng, attempting to persuade Liu Feng to join him. Liu Feng ignored him and returned to his foster father. Liu Bei reproached his adopted son for not helping Guan Yu and blamed him for Meng De's defection as well. It was then Liu Bei's chancellor, Zhuge Liang, pointing at Liu Feng's martial prowess and expressed worries that Liu Feng might become a threat to them if he switched his allegiance to their enemies. After urging him, Liu Bei eventually condemned Liu Feng to death by having him take his own life. Sun Yi and Sun He. At just 19 years old, Sun Yi, brother of Sun Quan, inherited a dangerous position as administrator of Danyang, a region simmering with unrest. In an effort to stabilize the area, he welcomed former enemies into his rank, men loyal to Shangxian, a recently executed official. Among them were Guilan and Dai Yuan, whom Sun Yi trusted with significant roles in both civil and military affairs. That trust would cost him his life. Ignoring a foreboding prophecy from his wife, Lady Shu, a woman versed in divination, Sun Yi hosted a banquet to settle matters with local leaders. Drunk and unarmed, he was attacked from behind by his own aide, Bian Hong, who had conspired with Guilan and Dai Yuan. The young administrator was murdered, alone, and betrayed. Sun He, a relative of Sun Quan's family, not to be confused with his son, blamed Guilan and Dai Yuan for Sun Yi's murder, but was unable to exert control over the military forces in the commandery. Guilan and Dai Yuan became worried because Sun He, who had no blood relations with Sun Yi, was already so upset over Sun Yi's death. They believed that they would be in deeper trouble if Sun Quan personally came to Danyang to pursue the matter, so they murdered Sun He as well. Cao Zhi was a prince of the state of Shaowei in the Three Kingdoms period of China, and an accomplished poet in his time. Cao Zhi was an impetuous man with little self-discipline. He was also a heavy drinker. Being the third son of the warlord Cao Cao, he would be envious of his elder brother Cao Pi, who knew how to act at the right times. Cao Pi also enjoyed a much closer relationship to the servants and subjects around Cao Cao, and they spoke well of him, and eventually Cao Cao would pick Cao Pi to succeed him, further aggravating Cao Zhi's already eccentric behavior. Cao Zhi's wife, Lady Sui, was caught by Cao Cao wearing clothes that were too extravagant and superior to her status, violating the law. As punishment, she was forced to commit suicide. Having chosen a successor, Cao Cao took measures to undermine other contestants, including his son Cao Zhi, going as far as executing a chief advisor to him named Yang Shou, just for merely being on his side. This would greatly unsettle Cao Zhi, and he would sink further into his drinking habits. During the Battle of Fan Castle, or Fan Cheng, Cao Ren was besieged by Guan Yu. Cao Cao named Cao Zhi to lead a relief force to the rescue in the hope that the task would instill into the latter a sense of responsibility. However, Cao Zhi was so drunk that he could not come forth to take the order. Cao Cao would then give up on his son. A few months later, Cao Cao would die, and one of the first things Cao Pi did after succeeding his father was to do away with Ding Yi and Ding Yi, two firm supporters of Cao Zhi. He would also exile Cao Zhi and his brothers, prohibiting them from taking part in central political issues. Prospects for Cao Zhi did not improve after Cao Pi died in June 226. He wrote to the Second Wei Emperor, his nephew Cao Rui, many times, seeking a position to apply his talents. However, Cao Rui still considered him a threat to the throne and declined all offers. Severely depressed by the setbacks and by the news that he was to leave the capital for the third time in 11 years, Cao Zhi developed a fatal illness and would eventually fall to it. Qin Yilu was a military officer who served under the general and warlord Liu Bu in the late Eastern Han Dynasty of China. When Liu Bu was besieged by allied forces of Cao Cao and Liu Bei at the Battle of Shapi, Liu Bu sent Qin Yilu to seek reinforcements from the warlord Zhang Yang and Yuan Shu. Qin Yilu's wife Lady Du and their son Qin Long remained behind in Shapi and stayed there as the city fell to Cao Cao's forces. Liu Bei's general Guan Yu repeatedly asked Cao Cao to let him marry Lady Du after their victory over Liu Bu. Cao Cao was curious about why Guan Yu wanted Lady Du so badly, and he guessed that she must have been very beautiful, so he ordered his men to bring her to meet him. As a result, despite Guan Yu's pleas, Lady Du became Cao Cao's concubine, and Qin Long became Cao Cao's adopted son. Under Cao Cao, Qin Yilu was given a position as the magistrate of a small county. When Liu Bei rebelled against Cao Cao and passed Xiaopei, Liu Bei's general Zhongfei called on Qin Yilu and scorned him, saying, "Another man took your wife, but you chose to be a magistrate under him. How can you behave so ignorantly as though nothing has happened? You wish to follow us?" Qin Yilu followed Liu Bei and traveled for several li before he regretted and decided to leave. Before he can fully go back, Zhang Fei would kill him. Cheng Ji. On June 2nd, 260, 19-year-old Cao Mao gathered his associates, declaring his intention to make a last-ditch attempt to overthrow Sima Zhao, even at the cost of his life. Sima Zhao would be notified about the plot, and Cao Mao would then lead his forces from the palace, personally wielding a sword. Sima Zhao's younger half-brother, Sima Zhou, attempted to put up resistance at one of the gates, but was defeated and fled. Sima Zhao's aide, Jie Chong, led another defense at the South Watchtower. When Cheng Ji, a military officer under Jie Chong, asked Jie what to do, Jie Chong told him to defend the Sima clan regardless of the consequences. Cheng Ji then approached Cao Mao and killed the emperor with his spear. After Cao Mao's death, the public called for Jie Chong's execution on the grounds that he had committed regicide. In the aftermath of the incident, the people demanded for Cheng Ji and Jie Chong to be executed. Sima Zhao considered the matter for more than 10 days, eventually resolving to kill Cheng Ji and his clan, but sparing Jie Chong, not wanting to execute someone who had been so loyal to him. Cheng Ji and his family were executed to appease public anger. Even in the brightest moments, there are still shadows. And although I do have a love for the dynasty warriors in the Three Kingdoms, I think it's important to talk about the darkest parts as well. As we all know that these characters weren't the perfect people that they are described to be in the novel or the games. Most of these characters who suffered such horrible fates was due to in part to falling out of favor of people they once were close to. Cai Wenji and Xiahouji not being able to control their environment and being a victim of circumstance is tragic. Liu Feng being killed after being loyal to his father is something that I just could not understand. History, especially the kind wrapped in legend and myth like the Three Kingdoms, often shines brightest on its most celebrated names. But just beyond that glow are the quieter tragedies, the forgotten wives, the loyal sons, the betrayed friends, and the silenced voices who never made it onto the battlefield, yet still paid the price for power, ambition, and survival. In this video, I wanted to shed light on just a few of those stories, the ones that history often brushes aside. They weren't just political moves or narrative twists. They were real people, enduring real pain, often for choices they never got to make, or became victims of their circumstances. If this video gave you a new perspective or even just a moment of pause, I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments what stories stuck with you most, and if there are others you think deserve to be told. I know this content is different from my usual, but it's interesting to dive into things that we don't really know about. And some of the perspectives that we already have on characters like Ma Chao and Zhong Fei, which I will go into on a different video, are often misconstrued and aren't as black and white as they seem. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Until next time.